Hi guys, welcome back to my channel. So today's video is going to be more of a career focused one, and I'm going to be discussing how to negotiate a pay rise or promotion. I put as a woman in the title. I'm hoping most of these steps are going to be fairly gender neutral, but obviously I am approaching this from a female perspective. And in my experience, having spoken to friends and colleagues and family members, there does seem to be a bit of a gender divide in approaching the subject, which again is why I put as a woman, but hopefully most of these tips will apply even if you are a man and if you're interested as well. So I'm going to be going through the whole process and steps that I've taken in the past. I will say that I am not someone that really thrives on confrontation or negotiations. I find the whole thing very, very uncomfortable, but these are some of the tips that I've learned to help me achieve a pay rise or promotion in the past. So hopefully they will be useful to you too, and I'm going to go ahead and get stuck right in. So the first step that I recommend you take is to really think about what it is that you want and really nail that down, but do it in a strategic way. So it may be that you want a promotion and a pay rise and more responsibility and all those things wrapped up into one, but it may also be the case that you would be happy with just a pay rise, or you do want a job title change, or maybe you want to shift responsibility. Whatever it is, make sure that you're very, very clear on what it is that you want. My second tip is, if you're not considering staying with your company long term, then consider asking for a promotion in job title only, foregoing the pay rise that can sometimes come with it. A job title change may seem arbitrary to you, but it will allow you to apply for a whole new different pool of jobs which will be better paid later on down the line. This is something that I have done in the past and it's worked really well. It's much easier to get job title changes than it is to get a pay rise to accompany it, because it's much easier for your manager or your supervisor to facilitate, because it doesn't require budgetary approval. So it's a win-win for everyone. Your company gets a happy employee, whilst you also get a whole new pool of jobs to apply to, which will be better paid than what you're on now. I will, however, say it's important to note that you shouldn't apply for a job as soon as you get the promotion, because you really need those few months on your CV, but later on down the line it will definitely open up better paid jobs, so it's well worth considering. Tip number 3 is to really build your case and plan ahead. Don't decide that you want a promotion today and then schedule a meeting for next week. I think it's really important to take your time with it and really plan and build your case, and ask yourself, why do you think you deserve it? And more importantly, why your manager or supervisor or the person deciding the promotion would think you deserve it too. It's important to approach it from their perspective, because essentially they're the ones that are going to be saying yes or no. Tip number 4 is to get buy-in before your meeting, and whether this is 6 months before or during an appraisal, pick a good time to do it and speak to your manager about your goals and get their buy-in and get their advice. Hopefully your manager is approachable enough to do this, but even if they're not, frame the conversation around specific goals and what you need to achieve to be able to get there. And an example of this might be, I am hoping to get to a management position in 6 months' time. Do you think this is realistic? If not, why not? And also, how do you think my performance is at the moment? What goals do you think I need to achieve to be able to get there? Is there anything else I should be working on to make this a reality? And just asking these questions will show that you're very motivated and driven, but will also help them to feel really involved, so that they are much more likely to say yes later on down the line. Tip number 5 is to pick your time carefully. This is so important, and it could make the difference between you getting a yes or a no answer, and it might have nothing to do with your performance. So make sure you're very aware and sensitive of your surroundings and what's going on in the workplace, and also with your manager as well. So don't plan it for right after a round of redundancies. That might seem obvious, but even if you've had it on your schedule for the last 6 months, wait a couple of months until the dust settles. It's important to be flexible like that, but also be aware of opportunities that might present itself. So if you hit a particular milestone a bit earlier, that might be a great time to bring it up. So just be aware and sensitive, and that may well help you achieve the yes answer that you're looking for. Tip number 6 is to know what your market value is. Do your research, be prepared, talk to friends, look on LinkedIn, look on Glassdoor. There are so many sites that can help you do this, and gauge what a fair salary is for the industry that you're working in, but also take into account your working hours and all those other elements. You might also want to consider inflation as well, because if you haven't had a pay rise in the last 2 or 3 years, then you could well be paid less than what you were when you began, which doesn't make any sense at all. So bring all these tangibles in. Obviously think about your work experience as well, whether you have specific technical knowledge now, all these things will come into play. It's also really important to make an unemotional argument though, and I'm the worst at this, especially when I get really involved in something and I feel really strongly about it, but the worst thing you can do is get emotional. So make sure you bring a tangible, fair, reasonable and as objective as possible argument to the table, and you're much more likely to succeed. Tip number 7 is practice what you're going to say and use someone as a sounding board. Don't just go into the meeting thinking that you'll figure it out on the spot, because it can be incredibly nerve-wracking. I have sweated profusely before at meetings and gotten so nervous, and it's always so much better when I already know what I'm going to say and I've already practiced a few scenarios. In previous jobs I've used colleagues to do this, I've used friends. Now I use Dan because he's a really great sounding board and always gives really good advice, but find someone in your life that can act as that person to talk through the scenario with you, which will help you become much better prepared. My last tip is probably the most controversial one, but it's to call their bluff if the situation calls for it. So if you're unhappy in your job and you really feel like you're being underpaid, underappreciated, and you're just not getting the promotions, the opportunity that you deserve, then consider looking for another job. Even if you're not 100% on leaving, it's important to know what else is out there and what other people are willing to pay for you. It's also true that if your company thinks they can get away with paying you as little as they are, then they absolutely will. They may well be willing to pay you 100k, but you might never know, because if they think that you're not going anywhere and you have undying loyalty to the company, then there's no incentive for them to do it. And that might seem very harsh and just unoptimistic and cynical. In truth, that's the way a lot of companies work. It's in their best interest to keep their costs as low as possible, and employees are a cost for them. And there are some really wonderful companies out there that will pay above and beyond and really value their employees, so this isn't true across the board. But if you feel like you're at a company that isn't deserving of you at the moment, then look at other options, and when you do get another offer, then bring it to your bosses and see if there's a discussion to be had. I've definitely done that in the past before and it's worked out really well, and I've ended up staying in that company. And I know lots of people see this as bribery or something or anything like that, but that's not the case at all. It's just important to know what your value is, what your market value is. So be willing to have those discussions and just be open-minded as to what opportunities might present themselves. And that's it for this video, guys. I hope that you enjoyed it and you found it useful. I do also want to mention one of my favourite books, which is Lean In by Sheryl Sandberg. It's super famous, so I'm sure most of you already know about it, but it has really been life-changing in the way that I now approach negotiations, my career, everything really. And I first read that book and I was completely dazzled by it, and a month after I finished it, I asked for my first promotion and I got it. And it was something that I'd been thinking about for so long and something I'd wanted, but I just didn't have the balls to ask for it, because I assumed that just by doing really good work and putting in the hours, someone would just promote me because that's what I deserved, and that's not the case. You could be the most deserving person out there, and unless you ask for it, you won't get. And that's such an important lesson, I think, especially for women who I think are quite just naturally less inclined to ask for things, even if they do deserve them. So I'd recommend reading the book. It really is wonderful and has completely changed my perspective on all things to do with career and progression. So I'm going to leave it there. Thank you so much for watching if you made it this far. If you enjoyed it, please do give it a thumbs up. And as always, thank you so much for watching. I'll see you in my next video. Bye, guys.